What's up, guys? It's Duke DeLate for the Intimacy Liberation Army. I'm, guys who don't know me, I'm an international dating coach. Been doing it for 15 years, worked with a bunch of different companies. And this year, I really want to leave my legacy. I want to, working a lot with a bunch of other self-help organizations, working with Limitless Mentoring primarily. And we're moving in a direction that's trying to create world change and build new leaders and stuff. And so, 15 years as a hardcore dating coach, I wanted to start documenting and eventually in 2025 leave an entire curriculum of how to get from zero to in a decent relationship. And so, month of January, we're starting with the self-awareness. And I'm just going to release a video pretty much every day. I got a book on self-awareness coming out February 1st. Pre-orders in the link below in the description. And I just want to spend as I've been moving forward in the self-help stuff, and I want to become a coach that serves communities and groups of people. I realized I was being held back because I felt like I left a bunch on the table. I didn't say what I needed to say about dating in a definitive way in something that's archived. So I decided to shoot a bunch of videos this year, finish it all out, and then kind of move on with the community of the life. And anybody asks me pick up and pre-relationship dating questions, I can point them to the right video and point them to the courses and be like, look, I recorded that all there, go over there. And that'll frame me up to do some more larger speaking events and more travel and stuff. So January, this is the first episode of 31. This is self-awareness and how it can make your relationships better in 2025. So introduction, it says, what if the secret to better relationships isn't about finding your partner or fixing or finding the one? What if it's all about you? Yeah, okay. Basically, most of the guys who come in to the workshops, they don't know what they want. They don't know who they are. They don't know how they want to express themselves in the world. They don't know any of that stuff. They have some faint notions that got into their heads from social conditioning, or they were told growing up or whatever, but they don't really have a clue on who they want to portray themselves out in the world to be, and eventually how they want to use that to change the world. So my old mentor, Owen, he said, game is always about you, right? You're not trying to manipulate the other person per se. You are trying to figure out where you fit and change the parts of you that are unpalatable to the people that you want, right? So there's a distinction there that we're going to get super deep into in a couple days about what's the difference between like people pleasing and influence. And I was talking to David about this stuff. David's the guy, my co-founder over at Limitless Mentoring. We were talking today about kind of the key concepts of what creates try-hardness versus confidence. And so anyway, it's really about you. Like all this practice stuff that you do, you go out, you socialize, you go out into the nightclubs and into the bars and into the streets and in the parks and the bookstores and whatever, and you go talk to people, and you start to develop who you are, what you want. You start to normalize all the fantasies and the weird things you had in your head. You bang them against reality, and it kind of breaks down the stuff that's trash, right? And so self-awareness, I've started to realize in the last few months of coaching. I mean, I know it the whole time, but like I've really realized that like most people who hire me to fix their dating problems really get the value of the whole coaching experience when they figure out who they are and what they want. Because at that point, they're empowered to do whatever the hell they want to do, and they don't let their fears and their mental roadblocks and stuff hold them back. So I figured I'd start January off before I do any of the hardcore dating stuff and all the hardcore, sexual escalation and finding your identity and destroying shame and loving your inner child and all that stuff. I just kind of figure out like, who are you, right? Like who Are you aware of who you are, how you project yourself in the world, and are you happy with that? Because that's really the foundation. So in January, we're just going to cover all sorts of ways self-awareness will affect you and your relationships, and some practical tips and worksheets and little workbooks and stuff that will help you find those values, define them, and then crush them so that you can get better, more attached, and compatible people in your life to be your romantic partners. Here it says, self-awareness is the cornerstone of meaningful connections, helping you understand your emotions, triggers, and behaviors so you can show up as your best self. Couldn't have said it better myself, but I'm going to say it better myself. When you're really aware of what triggers you, what throws your emotions out of whack, what makes you suck in and be guarded, what pulls up insecurity around it, and what kind of people can kind of stick you down on the hierarchy. When you know that stuff, then you can find solutions to change your state in the hierarchy, or change your mood, or change your behavior that you choose in that moment. If you don't know that stuff, then you get a lot of shots in the dark. And if without self-awareness, you're not going to have the ability to actually change your situation. So if you understand yourself, you can communicate more effectively, you can resolve your conflicts better, you can reach goals that are mutually exclusive, what's the word, co-created. You can reach the goals that are best for you and everybody involved. Not like a win-win situation, but you guys both together create a solution for the common goal, right? If you don't know who you are, then you just start throwing your hat in the ring with a bunch of thoughts that aren't necessarily solidified on your value system, and it creates tension and drama and dissonance and stuff that didn't need to be there. There's always going to be some sort of disagreement and hierarchical exchange or whatever in society, but very often you can kind of find common ground with another individual, whether they're your close intimate partner or they're somebody you're trying to get to know, and go from there and sort of co-create the experience together, rather than having to break down her walls or hold things back and manipulate or whatever. There's plenty of room for that stuff and influence, but most influence will start with, if you're not starting with fear, you're going to start with rapport. You're going to start with the sense of liking and feeling on the same page and vibing with each other. So the more self-aware you can be, the more you know that you're triggered, and the more behaviors that you throw out and all that, whatever. If you know that stuff, you're going to have much better time communicating and dealing with your conflicts, and it's going to completely transform your relationship. So what is self-awareness? Definition from the blog. Okay, self-awareness is the ability to understand your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. It's how they impact the people around you. It's like having a mirror that reflects not just what you do, but why you do it. And that's really the key. If you're in a relationship, no matter if it's new, whether you're just talking to some new girl at the bar, or whether you've been dating somebody for 3 years, you're in a relationship and you can't communicate your needs, your wants, your desires, your expectations, then the other person is going to have to kind of mind read that stuff in order to satisfy you. What's worse is, what I see a lot is, guys will come in and they don't have any understanding of what they actually want. So they have these phantom goals that are, they learned it from their friends, or they're avoiding their bad relationship in the past or whatever. And those phantom goals are not helping them because they're not tied to anything on the inside, right? So if you're able to communicate your wants, your needs, your desires, or whatever to whoever that you're trying to co-create a new relationship with, you're going to be much better off. If you have no real understanding of why you do shit, then you're not going to be able to communicate that to somebody else. And then they're going to have to mind read, and they're going to get it wrong. Your expectations are going to get let down. And then you can go down your downward spiral of weird attachment theory bullshit. And if you do know what's going on, then you can communicate and express clearly. Now, doesn't mean everybody's going to agree with you. Doesn't mean you're going to have primary influence the way we teach limitless, but it is going to mean that you're not going to misstep and shoot yourself in the foot a bunch by communicating unclearly. Some of us like to have the significance and the drama from communicating in a fuzzy way, and then have people try to seek us out and try to figure it out. But that's really a short-lived dopamine hit. It's not necessarily going to build something for the long term, and it's a shaky foundation to build something big, right? Some of us, some of the more cavalier people in my programs, they will come in and they'll be like, "Oh, I just want to fuck like a whole bunch of girls," and then I don't have to worry about communication and knowing myself and all that shit. I just give me the tactics and the techniques. And really, 15 years in this thing, training some of the best in the world at this stuff. There's a certain vibe for hookups, and it's not the same vibe for getting your emotional needs met or meeting somebody else's emotional needs. It's, in my opinion, I think it's one of the greatest things in the world, creating a short-term sexual relationship that may lead into a long-term sexual relationship. I'm such a big fan of it. Been polyamorous for a long time. I've got that side of the line views on that stuff, but really chasing sexual encounters with new people for sex's sake, for the hookup's sake, um, it's like drinking or eating key lime pie or whatever. Like, it is a thing, throws the dopamine up, everything's fun, everything's great. You can do it in a safe way that doesn't destroy each other's emotions or whatever. Everybody's better off for it. I think it's a positive thing to have two consenting, understanding humans do the thing and enjoy themselves at it, right? But more often than not, there's it's sort of sublimated. Like the hookup experience is trying to make up for something else, something in the depths of the psyche. Some people are just hardcore narcissists and like the significance. Some people are trying to gain and claw their way back from anxious attachment and get approved and feel loved. And some of them are just trying to connect and they're projecting all the connection expectations onto that other person without actually evaluating whether or not they're proper deliverers of that type of connection. And so everybody gets disappointed, everybody gets their hearts hurt, they get all bitter and whatever. So we don't want that to happen. And the more self aware you are, the less of that kind of stuff you have to deal with. Life is hard enough as it is. I feel like we're gonna, especially if you're ambitious and you have any sort of skill or talent or whatever, you're going to encounter a lot of adversity and suffering in life. In my mind, why create new suffering from expectations and projection and all this other stuff by not fixing your aberrant behavior patterns that you could be much more sociable, you could look at the world with a much more loving lens, and then deal with the real problems rather than the manufactured ones in your head. I I'd rather you just be more self-aware, understand where you stand, accept yourself for where you're at, and then strive to do better. Obviously, like I've loved myself for a very long time. It doesn't mean I don't want to be a better YouTuber, better business guy, better lover, better in the future, better family man. So I you know I don't have any problems thinking, oh, I need to be better than I am today, tomorrow. But I'm not going to sit around and beat myself up for not being as good as I could be. And the more aware of yourself you are and the reasonings behind what drives you, the better off you're going to be when it comes down to the whole self abuse, self sabotage, self destruction thing. Okay. Uh, uh, uh. Benefits of self awareness in relationships. Oh, yeah. Understanding emotional needs. I was just talking about that. So, understanding your emotional needs. When you're self aware, you you know why you think things. You can kind of pinpoint where things come up. I had a conversation with my partner of 15 years. She asked me if I wanted to move in with her, and I said, "Fuck no." Right? And she gave me this look like, "Why is that the case?" And she knows. And so but there's a little power game going on there. She was like, "Oh, I don't understand. After all this time, why wouldn't you want to?" Okay, here's the deal. I know why. I know that we operate best in varying forms of autonomy, where she gets kind of do her own thing. I stay out of her hair. I do my own thing. We stay out of her hair. And then we get together when it's we both choose to create an experience together. If I'm all up in her shit, she very quickly just hates me and wants me to get away. And hanging out with me becomes an obligation. And I'm like, if I lived with you, this would exacerbate that problem. And until we're willing to fix that, then I'm not going to cohabitate with you. That doesn't make any sense. We've been doing good how it is, right? And I know why, right? And it's uncomfortable to kind of assert myself and be like, look, this is something that I don't tolerate, feeling like I'm a burden in your face. And so I'm going to just avoid that by doing these things. When we want to address this thing where you feel like you don't have enough autonomy when I'm constantly in your space, if when you want to go and fix that, then we can go discuss this living situation thing. And she gave me a bunch of shit for it, and I felt like shit about it because it was very uncomfortable to have that conversation in in the moment, right? But I know that if I don't be honest with how I really have evaluated the situation, and I believe, then it's just going to sow sort of disillusionment and chaos into the future. And so she got all huffy for a second, but then she understands, right? And she came back and just kind of let the issue die. She didn't try to press me into it, and so I'm very self-aware. I understand why I make the choices I do, and a lot of the choices that I make that are hard, I evaluate them a lot so that I don't make dumbass choices that hurt a bunch of people. And having that self-awareness helps me pinpoint that stuff, helps me communicate better, and understand my emotional needs. In the same vein, number two of how self-awareness makes your dating life better is that it can improve your conflict resolution skills. If you can kind of stay focused on the core issue while you're arguing with somebody or while you're having a debate, if you can stay focused on the fact that you're trying to co-create something new together to solve problems in the real world, without getting your ego pricked or your triggers going off or your weird behaviors so that you defend yourself going off, then you're going to have better conflicts. You're still going to have conflicts, obviously, because you're two different people with two different viewpoints, but uh, whether or not it's you just met her or you're about to marry her or whatever, whether or not the timeline, it doesn't matter. You're still vying for feeling rapport and understanding each other. And it allows you to kind of stay calm and focused while you're arguing and reach a solution that's more co-created than not. If you sit around thinking somebody's dumb as fuck for hurting your feelings, and then you treat them that way for the rest of the conversation, you're not going to get anywhere in the conflict resolution side. You're not going to get any way in a form of collaboration that will allow you to push things forward in the relationship and grow. If you're constantly undercutting that other person because you villainize them or you objectify them in a way, my coach Jeff, he would have said, othering them in a way that makes them not or subhuman and makes you right or whatever. That's just like a cloudy shield of smoke over the top of the fact that you didn't actually know what you wanted. And if you did know what you wanted, you'd be able to state it and assert it clearly, right? Um, Very often, guys just know what they don't want, but they don't know what they do want, and they're unable to communicate that. Self-awareness will help. The third thing is you can align your values a lot better if you can articulate them. If you're aware of why you think the way you think, you're aware of why you think the things you think, and aware of why you behave the way you behave, when talking about a particular subject, then you're going to have a much better time communicating that with the other person and a higher chance at resolution because you don't have to play the Robert Cialdini click whir tapes of every time you got into this conversation before, you just have this defense mechanism and you throw it up. You don't have to do that because you know, okay, this is where I'm coming from and this is what I believe. I'm actually okay with changing my belief system if you're able to have a conversation with me about it. But I'm not going to go change it just because you feel bad. Because if you can't articulate and I know why, then I have not the upper hand, but I have the solid ground in that conversation because you're not going to really budge me because you're not going to if you don't change my belief system. I have very good reasons for why I do the things I do because I'm self-aware. So what that opens up into is it brings the other person, like if you're coming from a place of vulnerability and saying, okay, look, this is why I think the way I think, and this is what taught me that, and I'm open to new viewpoints, but it's served me pretty well so far. I'm curious, how do you see the situation? And you have that conversation. Sometimes people just want to be pissed, and that'll piss them off more. But um, you're not going to get much growth in a relationship if you're constantly what's the word, compromising and giving ground to denying yourself in order to make the other person stop flipping out. Like I'd rather you just flip the fuck out and deal with the actual thing, rather than uh, me make you feel better for a second, then I feel safe again, and then we just repeat the cycle over and over again. Fuck that. So, oh yeah, practical stuff. Okay, every time I tell people to journal, they give me a bunch of bullshit. I don't have enough time. I don't do this. I just can't pull myself to do it. I'm blah, 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 blah. Just writing is dumb. Okay, fine. Don't. But I do. And I love it. So I'm constantly going to tell people to do it. I think it's one of the most important things you can do. It's not only visual; it's kinesthetic. It's in the system. If you focus and you make it a practice, you're going to be able to pull things out of your brain and record them, things that are normally fleeting by. Also, it keeps my head straight. This is my journal for this year. Well, not this year. Like this is the last number of. This was from September or whatever, and all the way up to today. Well, that was yesterday, but yeah. So I got year plans and things to do, but I journal every day, and I go over my goals, I go over my systems, I go over my beliefs, and I set goals for the day that are going to match my inner core beliefs. And as I move towards the Dr. Ben Hardy would call my future self, I want to arrive there uh, having grown to become, but to my potential. So I will always put journaling as a self-awareness exercise, especially shadow journaling. It really works for me to bring up the sort of parts integration between like my inner child and myself whenever I'm having these kind of like behavioral things like, oh, well, everybody's going to leave me, so I better, reject them first or whatever will come up from my child. And I'm like, oh, hold on. Just because everybody's going to leave you doesn't mean that you're not good enough. And is this something you're afraid of, or is you just afraid of the abandonment? And so I'll write this to myself, and then my inner child will respond, and I'll be like, oh, and then I'll resolve it inside myself. It's kind of like NLP parts integration when you take that guided process, and it's super badass. Like I have grown leaps and bounds, especially over the last couple of years, as I started to implement newer journaling technologies, like it from Dr. Ben Hardy. And if you look up, I forget her name. Try to put her in the show notes. Uh, oh man, I forgot her name. But she did a really good thing on shadow work, and she just sat there with a little TikTok microphone and just explained journaling shadow work, and it's pretty transformational for me. So it's if you want to do self-awareness stuff, definitely look at Dr. Benjamin Hardy's future self concept, and do his like future self journaling questions. I did that last year, and it was pretty phenomenal. I understood like, oh, this is why I think the way I think. I was always already pretty sophisticated because I'd gone through a number of stuff, Tony Robbins companies, and all these other things that gave me a clear sense of value systems. But the I journal every day in order to kind of capture the triggers from the day or the situations from the day that put me in a position to have to respond emotionally. And I just have such insight as I go over them. Oh, this is how much I've grown. This is the concepts that I've figured out, and just journal, just fucking journal. Simple questions to ask are, what did I write here? What emotions did I feel today and why? How did I react to conflict? And what could I have done differently? What are 3 things I'm grateful for in my relationships? Okay, so gratitude is part of the journal thing. I actually don't do gratitude in the journal anymore. I do it from here. I do this like 108 things I'm grateful for, fully associated visual thing. It takes like fucking no minutes in the morning, and it keeps my brain on the right track. So I don't actually do gratitude in the journal anymore. I do it in the brain and in the ether. But sorry, it's like 2 in the morning. Um, but you can definitely do your emotional, like what emotion did I feel, and why did I feel them? Just journaling that, like we who was it, Julian Blanc. I think he said, we feel only like 8 emotions a day if we're not present and plugged in. And yeah, like basically, I feel the same kind of stuff all the time. And but when new things pop up, I write them down. I'm like, why did I feel that? Oh, it's because I was afraid that this was going to happen, or I was worrying about that because, I didn't prepare and I didn't understand what the consequences were or whatever. And then I can be clear about why I'm feeling the feelings I feel. It'll help me sort of sublimate better actions to take the next time that stuff comes around. How did I react to conflict? What could I have done differently? That was great. That's a great one. If you had a conflict in the day, write it down. I write that stuff down a lot. If I run into something that I don't know how to deal with, I'm like, oh man, I felt some type of way. I had to reset myself for a second and try to respond in a way that was loving and present, because it sucked me right back into not present and fearful and you know walled off and defending myself. And so, how did I react to that, and what can I do differently in the future with these other values in mind? Uh, what are the things I'm grateful for in my relationships? That's a good one too. But like I said, I don't do gratitude in the journal. A lot of people do the gratitude stuff, and I did it for years. Where you be like, I'm grateful for this, and this is why, and my relationship has these positive traits, and I'm grateful that the other person will put their 2 cents in and do those positive traits with me. Yeah, that's great. Second thing you do to increase self awareness is mindfulness practice. Uh, I'm not going to do a whole primer on mindfulness in this episode, but I got a book and a course on mindfulness somewhere on a hard drive. I haven't released it, so I'll dig that up and stick that in the Limitless courseware, or the ILA courseware, which is at I forget what I put. It's intimacyliberation.army.com/courses or learn. Anyway, I'll stick the link down there. And so I'll figure that out. I'll dig up the mindfulness stuff tomorrow, and I'll stick it in the thing. So if you want to go through I think it's a 4-week mindfulness thing. Uh, Mindfulness is so key. It's I found, like, my mother died probably 4 months ago, and I'm pretty self aware, man. But after she was gone, I really understood how much just her being alive was controlling my thoughts and behaviors and actions. I still my own guy, I still did my own shit, but like I was not aware of how how much I considered her opinion and her judgment until she was gone. And we had cleared up a bunch of stuff. I went to therapy and like I had this whole conversation. We got a lot of stuff out on the table. It was great. Like I didn't resent her. We didn't, we didn't have, she still did a lot of stuff I wasn't agreeing with and tried to jump down my throat about things that way I was in my life and made things uncomfortable or whatever. But like, I didn't vilify her anymore. Like I was good. When she died, I didn't feel any shame or guilt or problems with it. I was like, that sucks. I feel the loss, going through the grief thing. But as the kind of smoke cleared, in the last couple of months, I realized that like I did a lot of things considering her opinion and how she was going to respond. Even if I did them rebelliously or did them in direct face, I'm like making an obvious choice. I'm going to do this. This is going to hurt her feelings, but I think it's for the best, right? After she's gone, didn't I didn't know how much she had influence on me, and I've been studying this shit for years. And okay. So one thing that the mindfulness practice can do is make you present, because you can kind of detach yourself. I told you I'm not going to do a primer of the whole thing. Anyway, find the course; it's in the links. I dealing with somebody right in front of you and doing the mindfulness stuff and being like, okay, I have this feeling, it's floating by. I am not it. I'm just observing it. You can stop yourself from shooting yourself in the foot with automatic behaviors you didn't even know were running you. And so, that to be said, how to develop self awareness, journal a bunch, mindfulness practice, and then they say identify triggers. But that's the third thing. And I do this more less in the journal and in the self reflection stuff, and I do it more in real life. I go out and have social interactions on purpose so that I get triggered, so that I deal with new situations that I may use something from childhood or issues to deal with, because that's fascinating to me. I've actually kind of shifted my brain around, brainwashed myself into thinking, okay, if I get into a new scenario, that is better than me staying in a bunch of old scenarios that I have mastery over, because I can constantly expand my influence, my ability to connect with other people, my ability to deal with different types of people in my space. I think that's a great thing. And so when I'm identifying my triggers, I do it in real world. I bang myself up against reality so that I can deal with reality in the future. This is some other stuff. I'm gonna put this in the common challenges and how to overcome them while developing this stuff. Yeah, so like I said, we got 30 more days of the self-awareness topic in a bunch of different nuanced ways. If any of this stuff remains relevant after I go over tomorrow's notes, I'll stick them in a worksheet and I'll stick them in the link down in the bottom. Otherwise, I say we focus on improving, understanding your emotional needs, improving your conflict resolution skills, and aligning your values by practicing journaling, mindfulness, and IDing what pisses you off in the real world, right? Or IDing your triggers or makes you behave in ways that you don't like in the real world. So that's the start of the craziness for the week or for the month of January. On the conclusion side in the blog, it says self-awareness isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Every small step you take, it's whether it's journaling, practicing mindfulness, or testing things in the real world, it brings you closer to fulfilling relationships that you deserve. Basically, if you're able to communicate well, later on we'll talk about boundaries and stuff, but if you're able to communicate well and clearly and know who you are and what you stand for, you're going to draw the right kind of people around you. Obviously, they're not going to do it from your house, right? You got to go out and meet people and do all that stuff. But if you let fear hold you back, if you let confusion and the fog of not knowing who you are and what you stand for, then you're going to have issues finding somebody who can connect with you because you can't even connect with you. So that's the first module on self-awareness. They're going to get a little bit more coherent. I'll try to shoot them before I should have been in bed 2 hours ago. And thanks for joining me. If you've been here this long, obviously subscribe. If you don't want to miss all the rest of the self-awareness stuff, hit the little bell and the icon and I actually don't care that much about the algorithm, so you don't need to help me out. But I do want to leave this in a place that can be seen and viewed later, and then I can point my AI at it, and it can help me formulate new workshops in the future. So I'll leave you with this. Take a moment today to reflect. What can you do today that can build your knowledge of self or your self-awareness? Your relationships and your future self are going to thank you for the work that you've done today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, stay awesome.